Comfy?
Sport bikes suck. That's why they're losing market share to nakeds, ADV bikes, and sport tours. Let me qualify that statement. Traditional sport bikes suck at everything except for going as fast as possible on a paved curvy road or racetrack. And no wonder. That's what they were built to do, and they do it exceedingly well, at the expense of comfort and practicality. I know, I used to have one, and other than going way too fast for any sane human being, that bike was useless. But until recently, they were pretty popular. If you wanted to look like your favorite superbike racer, you could ride the same bike they did, on the road no less. But soon folks began to question that mentality. Their wrists screamed from holding up their weight on the too low clip-on bars, their butt hurt from sitting on the plank seats, and so did their wallets from the premiums charged by insurance companies for anything with names like Ninja or GSXR. Too many squids smeared themselves on the roads and insurance prices soared, and that's providing you could even get your crotch rocket insured. And wise to all this, both the manufacturers and riders began shifting to naked motorcycles, like the Yamaha MT-07, which I reviewed last year, link in the top right corner. Then Yamaha chose to discontinue its 4-cylinder 600cc Super Sport, the R6, one of the highest selling 600cc bikes out there. They still offer a track-only version, which is fitting because the track is where that bike belongs. And replaced it with this, the R7, which I would argue is a far superior motorcycle on the road. I spent a week with this one, all on public roads, and it didn't suck. Want to know the details? Stay tuned for the full story. And if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might be interested in the subject matter. It's funny that the first modern naked bikes were essentially 80s sport bikes that had been crashed and had their fairings destroyed. The squids riding them would put them back on the road and call them street fighters. The R7 is the opposite. It basically stems from the MT-07, the best-selling mid-sized naked bike in the world. When designing its new sport bike, Yamaha started with the torquey CP2 engine and frame from the MT-07, added clip-on bars, a fairing, and improved the front suspension. This produced a motorcycle more suited for the street and real-world riding than for the track. The power characteristics of Yamaha's CP2 engine are the opposite of a typical 4-cylinder 600cc Supersport. Where 600 has little torque down low and has to be wound up to stratospheric revs to produce the big power, the R7 pulls from low revs and rides a wave of torque from corner to corner. You don't need to rev this motorcycle out, in fact you really can't. Redline is at 10,000 RPM, a number at which the average 600 is just winding up. The advantage of this is that the R7 does not need to be screaming at top revs when riding fast. The disadvantage is less peak power. The R7 produces 74 horsepower and 50 pound-feet of torque out of its 689cc parallel twin. But it hits that peak torque at 6,500 RPM, and peak power arrives at 8,750. Contrast that to the last street-legal R6, which produced 46 pound-feet of torque, but at 10,500 RPM, and a very impressive 117 horsepower. However, that power didn't arrive until 14,500 RPM. So yes, the R6 is way quicker on a long straightaway on a racetrack if you keep that engine pinned and screaming, but riding that way on the streets gets old fast. Not only are you fraying your nerves, but you're letting every cop within a mile radius know what you're up to. In contrast, the R7 rushes out of corners at lower revs and does not need the piss revved out of it to go fast. Yes, in a straight line it's not as fast, topping out at about 212 km per hour indicated on the speedo. But on the street you don't need much more. Quite frankly, on a track that doesn't have long straightaways you don't need it either. And I'm guessing that on such a track the average rider will be faster on the R7 than the R6. This is because it takes more skill to keep the peakier 4-cylinder motor spinning near its max revs than the R7's torquey twin. Engine sound: the 270-degree crank makes the parallel twin sound like a V-twin. And although I found the stock pipe sounded a bit muted, I have the same motor on my Tenere 700, and with a MIV slip-on, it sounds mean. The power produced by the motor makes its way to the pavement through a 6-speed gearbox which never missed a shift in my time with the bike. A slipper clutch is standard and a quick shifter optional. Due to the wide power band, this bike can largely be left in one gear, third or fourth on a twisty road, and will happily pull hard out of corners and sprint down the straights, leaving the rider free to concentrate on choosing a good line rather than worrying about gear selection. But how does it handle? Very well, thanks to the light weight. The wet weight of the R7 is 414 pounds, which is 5 pounds less than the last street-legal R6, and which makes the bike feel quite sprightly in side-to-side transitions. The fully adjustable upside-down forks on the R7, a significant upgrade over the non-adjustable standard ones on the MT-07, keep the front wheel composed and tracking well through corners. The shock is preload and rebound adjustable, and both ends have 5.1 inches of travel, which is enough to soak up all but the biggest bumps on most paved roads. Finally, the clip-on bars, which put the rider further over the front of the bike, give the R7 Pilot more confidence in the front wheel than most naked motorcycles. Yes, being perched over the front of the machine may be a downgrade in comfort, but it's a significant upgrade in front wheel traction and feel. Putting your weight further over the front axle increases front wheel grip and allows for higher corner speeds and greater lean angles. The R7 feels better planted in a corner than the MT-07 or most naked bikes with higher bars. But does this come at the expense of comfort? Yes, a little. There's more weight resting on your wrists when riding the R7 than the MT-07. But still not as much as on an R6, which was known for its aggressive riding position. Like all sport bikes, the R7 has a fairly tall seat, 32.9 inches, and lower bars. As sport bikes go, its riding position is on the less aggressive side of things when compared to the head-down, ass-up rider placements on motorcycles aimed more at track riding, but it's definitely no lounge chair. The bars are low and the pegs high. One thing I can say about it is that it gets more comfortable at highway speeds. Hit about 80 miles per hour or 130 kilometers per hour, and the wind blast against your head and shoulders lifts some of that weight off your wrists. Weather protection from the fairing and small bubble windshield is decent, and this bike will be more pleasant to ride in cold weather than the typical naked. Seat comfort is good for the rider, and I was able to do a few 3-hour rides without needing a chiropractor, something I wouldn't be able to say about the old R6. Passenger comfort, on the other hand, was abysmal, and the R7 has the distinction of being the worst bike for carrying a passenger I've ever tested. Brooke hated the piece of butt floss that passes for a back seat, complained about the lack of anything to hold on to, and was either pressing down on my shoulders, causing more weight to be supported by my wrists, or sliding into me and causing my sensitive bits to slam into the tank. Keep this as a solo ride and only carry a passenger in dire emergencies. Overall, because the R7 is among the more comfortable sport bikes out there, for the rider, it can be used as a light sport tour. It does a pretty good job of holding a high pace on the highway, and over longer distances is relatively smooth. No cruise control is provided though, and at high speeds there is some vibration in the foot pegs, but not enough to be a deal breaker. The 13-liter tank seems small, but stellar fuel efficiency does allow you to get 270 kilometers or 170 miles down the road before the low fuel light comes on if you're riding at a reasonable pace in 6th gear. You should be able to get 300k, but don't tempt fate by going for much more. Other details? Other than ABS, there are no real electronics to speak of, which is fine with me. This is not a 150 horsepower superbike that needs riding modes. The dash is nice enough, the display is utilitarian, and the info is clear and legible. The mirrors don't vibrate and provide you with an excellent view of your elbows. You have to tuck the elbows in to actually see what's behind you. Finally, the brakes do their job, but generally lack the crazy racetrack bite of most supersports. They're perfectly capable of hauling you down on the street, but if you want to do long track days, you may want to upgrade. So what about the looks? It's a sport bike and looks like other sport bikes. Aggressive stance, fairing, clip-ons. I like the MotoGP inspired pipe, but generally find the styling to be a bit vanilla. This bike does not compete with the 600cc class super sports because it costs less, but does take on the Kawasaki Ninja 650 and Suzuki SV650X. It handles a bit better than those bikes in my opinion, but doesn't look as good. Except in the 2023 World GP 60th anniversary color scheme. That looks awesome, and being a sucker for gold wheels would be the one I'd get. It also comes in blue and black, or just black. Finally, the cost. In the States, the 2022 model costs $9,000 and the 2023 runs $9,200 MSRP US dollars. In Canada, prices range from 10,800 to 11,100 Canadian. That's 2,000 to 3,000 bucks less than a typical 600 Supersport. In its own class, the R7 costs about the same as the Kawasaki Ninja 650 and a bit more than a Suzuki SV650X while being the most modern design of the three. Keep in mind that even if you have the money to go for a 600cc 4-cylinder Supersport, the insurance on these bikes is outlandish in many jurisdictions. In Ontario, Canada, where I live, you will pay 3 times the rate for a race replica 600 as for a more street-oriented bike like the R7 or Ninja 650. So unless you plan on primarily playing Rossi at your local track, financially it makes a lot more sense to go for the real-world bikes that the insurance companies don't have on their hit list. And again, you can thank all the squids who got themselves smeared all over the roads on their GSXRs for that. So why get a sport bike instead of a naked? A bit more weather protection and a bit better handling at the cost of some comfort. Also, the R7 looks better than the MT-07 in my opinion. I'm not a sport bike guy, but if I'm buying a bike to ride the twisties, the R7 would be near the top of my list. Great engine for the street, impressive suspension, lightweight, and a reasonable price make it a winner, not to mention Yamaha reliability. I'd get the white and red and spring for a quick shifter and slip-on pipe, then go terrorize the back roads. I mean, ride responsibly. Or I'd wait for the long-rumored R9 to make an appearance. Maybe at this year's EICMA in November. We can all hope. So what would be your perfect bike for the curvy roads? Does the R7 appeal, or would you go for something else? Please share your thoughts in the comments and share this video with someone who would enjoy it. Thanks for watching and ride safe out there.
If you're interested in any of the gear that Brooke and I wear or use, or the camera equipment we use to film this channel, the links are below. Everything listed there was bought with our own money and we are not sponsored by any company. However, the links below are affiliate links and the channel is paid a small amount for referring you to shop at no additional cost to you. We do not recommend any products that we are not satisfied with ourselves, but we do strongly urge you to do your research and select the correct size for items like helmets and clothing. As always, thanks for watching, your support is greatly appreciated. Please hit that subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. And whatever you ride, enjoy it. Wave at other bikers no matter what they're riding. We're all part of a brotherhood and sisterhood. Keep the rubber side down, shiny side up, and may the spokes be with you.